This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And today I have on an individual who I found on Podmatch, and I love Podmatch, even though it's not a dating site, because I don't think I would like a dating site if it were. But it's a connection site, and it's connection for podcasters to meet each other and to find guests. And my guest talks about continuous improvement. And I don't know why so many of us just become satisfied with, okay, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. To me, that's a little bit boring, but it also doesn't allow me to grow. And so my guest, Rick Heyland, is with us, and I'm hoping that I'm right about you, Rick, that you've got all this energy, but maybe you didn't have it earlier in your life, or have you always been looking for improvement?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it started for me. I was raised with goals and continuous improvement, so that was a very early influence. One of my early heroes was author and Stephen R. Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who talks about living a purposeful life in habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. And then Karen, I had a particular insight and experience as a 26-year-old, and I'll try to paint it for you, but basically It was a little mini crisis in MBA school. I had just moved my family and 2 young children, Cheryl and I, across the country to the East Coast to go on a prestigious MBA program. And I knew I was one of the youngest in the program and least experienced. So I knew I had to work really hard. And I had been taught the value of hard work. And so that was going to be the mantra. And I got in about 6-7 weeks into the program. And I remember this is 40 years ago now, but this is a professor, or 35 years ago, professor named Don in economics. And it was the first big exam that we got back 6 or 7 weeks into the program. I'd been working so hard, knew I needed to double down and dedicate. And I got one of the lowest grades in the class. And I was devastated, partly because of the grade, partly because I'd moved my family away from loved ones and everything we knew was normal. And so it was a bit of a mini crisis on a Friday night. And come Saturday, I was feeling a little bit better, but I said to Cheryl, you know what, I'm going to go downstairs in our unfinished flat apartment basement and do a little bit of reading and figure out what I want to do. And with my life was kind of the comment. And so I went back down and I read 2 chapters in 2 books. Richard Bowles, What Colors Your Parachute, has an interesting chapter about defining your life through mission and vision and purpose. And Stephen Covey has that interesting chapter called Beginning with the End in Mind. He calls it mission statements. I'll call it purpose statements. I use the 2 terms interchangeably. But so I thought, you know what, I got nothing to lose at this point. I'd been reading about this idea of developing a purpose statement for your life, a vision, if you will, for how you want to interact the rest of your years. And so I did it that weekend. And I looked and read the chapters and put together a couple thoughts and had this 40-word statement about continuous improvement, action, and orientation make a difference in people's lives. So I didn't think much about it, went back, picked myself back up, went back to school. And I don't remember thinking much about that purpose statement until a year later, we went to go finding a job. And nothing looked interesting. Nobody thought I was interesting. And in came a small consulting shop. And Karen, they used almost the exact same words I had in my purpose statement from a year before that. Almost. Wow. And so I enthusiastically went home, told Cheryl, hey, I signed up for my dream job. I found it. Action orientation, people development, bottom line development. We're going to help. We're going to make a difference. So a few days later, I get back the posting, and it's back in the day before online. And so I had to go to the recruiting office and put my finger on the piece of paper and find out if my name was on it. So embarrassing. And it wasn't. And I was completely shocked. I thought there was no way I wouldn't be on that list. So I called the recruiter in Vancouver and told him that, I said, hey, I think you made a mistake. I applied for this job and my name wasn't on it. And I had nothing to lose at that point. So I told them about this experience of the purpose statement the year before, blah, blah, blah. And they say, they looked up my resume and said, okay, kid, you're a little young, you're a little, but I like your chutzpah. Write your name up on the list, 5 o'clock on a Thursday. I was the last interview on a Thursday night. And, bottom line is I was the only one that got the job, and I retired 32 years later as COO and second largest shareholder. And that was 2.5 years ago. So and then when I went to retire, I thought, you know what, I need to write. I'm not a great writer per se, but there's so many great services that can help you on that. I need to put a book together about my thoughts about this purpose statement.
Sure.
And the clarity that it drove. So when I was doing the research for that, and that's what that book is you referred to, Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide to living your best life. When I was doing the research for that, all of a sudden I found like 10 health benefits to living on purpose, right? It's less hospital time, less heart problems, more life satisfaction, more job satisfaction, more all these. You live longer if you're living with purpose. And so it really motivated me to put this book together, both among my own personal experiences, and I understood the value in it, in articulating and being intentional about your life. So that's kind of how I got into it and why I wrote the book in the first place.
Well, and I think we're probably somewhere in the same age range. And I know growing up, I had that concept at 9 or 10 years old. I knew exactly who I thought I was going to be. I was going to get married. I was going to live down the street from my parents. Friday nights, we would go to their house for dinner. Sunday, they would come to my house for brunch. It was just all about family. And that was 9 or 10 years old. 14 or 15, we had moved away from that neighborhood, actually moved to another state. And that wasn't what I believed my life was going to be. I was getting into high school. I was going to go to college. I love to talk. So therefore, I'm going to go be on TV someday. And again, I kept looking down these paths, but I was allowing people around me to tell me, you can't do that. No, that's not for you. And I allowed that in my life for a long time. And I think a lot of women that I grew up with had the same thing. In fact, most of my girlfriends went out and got their teaching certifications, and they taught for 25, 30 years. And when they, retired, the first thing they said was, I'm so glad to be out of this. I didn't want to do this. And I did it for 30 years. A lot of us didn't think about the word purpose. And I love that you use that, because what is our purpose here? Each of us has a different purpose. So when you moved your family, you obviously had a very devoted wife who said, sure, let's go across country and find your dream. How tough was that really?
Well, at the time, it was very tough, right? And especially when you're perceived failing at said move and said big experience. And fortunately, she traveled well, the kids traveled well. So it was more me feeling the guilt as the provider, saying, I need to get my act together here. I've got a family to provide for. And she was incredibly supportive and still is to this day. And so that part worked out. But, I think out of all those experiences, setbacks and trials, big or small, and this was probably a small one compared to some of the other things that we know about since then, right? With health challenges and death and divorce and all those things that happen in life. But I think out of setbacks, you can learn, and you can be stronger out of them. One of my heroes is Nelson Mandela. I lived in South Africa for 2 years, and he was when I lived there in the 90s, he was in Robben Island, 20 miles off the coast. No, actually, it's not that far. You can actually see it from Cape Town, but a few miles off the coast in Robben Island for 27 years. And this was the gentleman that completely forgave his captors and completely learned forgiveness And when he came out, became president and really had all the leverage in the world and still forgave. And he had a quote. So that was one of the many lessons I learned from him. But one of his quotes that I love relative to this topic is, I never lose. I either win or learn. And I think that if we had that mentality in life, like it's not, I didn't lose, I had a setback. What am I grateful for? What do I still have that's abundant, that's blessings in my life? And what do I learn from that setback? How can I do this differently and better? So I think with that mentality, I'm always, Karen, trying to figure out how do we be successful and happy? Because I know a lot of successful people, money-wise, that are very unhappy and very angry people. And they have positions in power and they have wealth and money, yet not happiness. And so how do we find that balance between both being, having some means and success and purpose and progression in life, and also this happiness factor? So I love trying to find and triangulate the balance between those two.
And what I also find interesting in what you're doing is that so many of us keep waiting for somebody else to make us happy. And I heard a lot of this yesterday on Valentine's Day, and social media was running rampant. Oh, I'm so happy today. My husband gave me flowers. I'm so happy today. Something lovingly happened. And I'm in a very good long-term marriage. So, I'm reading it and I'm not feeling jealous, but I'm thinking, so that's just for today that you're happy, and you're happy because you got flowers. I'm happy that my husband and I are together 39 years. I'm happy that the obstacles that were in front of us actually created challenges that we could work through and gave us knowledge for the future if we came up to that same challenge again. And it drove me back to a time when I thought I wasn't happy unless, somebody told me that they liked what I said, liked what I was wearing. It's like, really? Why can't I do that for myself? And that's why I created Avoid the Maze and have reached out to individuals like you who also have found that, I could have gone and taken a job, didn't have to go on, for a higher degree, could have made the money, could have stayed around family and friends, but would I have been happy? And probably your answer at that time, at least, was no, that wouldn't have made me happy.
Yeah. It's interesting. I did a survey a lot. It's been 2 years now. It was just 1,500 people, but it was Australia, UK, Canada, and the US. And I asked several questions about happiness and success and trying to find the elixir, if you will, the formula, if you will. And as we did some correlation on it, the happiest people had 3 habits. One, they exercised regularly. That doesn't mean they were marathon runners. It might have just been walking, right? Getting out in nature. Number 2, they planned every day. That was part of the purpose. They had a plan for each day. There was plan to be productive, to connect with people. They planned and they organized their life. And number 3, they were in service to somebody or something. So exercise, service, planning were the 3 of that happy, that had nothing to do with money and had nothing to do with, it had everything to do with internally what your habits are, that you can create an environment of happiness no matter what's going around. Now, there's some big sad things that can go on that might set us back for a time period. But I really believe with those 3 habits, you can create success and happiness in almost every environment.
And I think we also have to understand that we all see success differently.
Yes.
I remember my oldest brother, initially he taught in the public schools. He really loved his job. sadly, he and his wife lost a child, a sudden infant death, and they just they looked like they were going to both fall apart separately. And family got involved, and they started their own nursery school and built it into, I think it was like nursery through 5th grade. And my brother loved it, but it wasn't his passion. And I saw him first being really excited in the classroom, and then falling apart, then sort of getting excited about building this school, which they had for quite a while. But it wasn't until my brother and sister-in-law got divorced. My brother looked around, hit obstacles, but then one day realized what he loved about teaching. And that was taking a simple word and finding meaning in the word and seeing how it, created another word. And so he became a Scrabble maven. And for the last 30 plus years, that's been his mission and purpose. And he brings people together who, just love words. And I wouldn't have thought of that as something somebody could do, but he does it. And he wakes up with purpose every morning. He finds a new word, he'll send it to me, and no definition. And one of his questions is, so what do you think the word is? And sometimes I get it right on, and sometimes I'm off the mark, but it doesn't make any difference. I've looked at it, I've challenged myself. And it sounds like that's what you've done over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I think life is all about continuing to improve, continue to progress. In fact, I think there's a balance, Karen, between Eastern philosophies and Western philosophies. And I'm generalizing here for a second, but if you think about our Western ideals of striving, of trying to do great things with your life, be excellent, be successful, and whatever you term that. And then the Eastern philosophies, Buddhist philosophies of mindfulness, of staying present, of staying content. If you could balance those two, that to me is the secret to success and happiness. If you can still strive, have a dream, have a goal for your life and a vision of where you want to take, and something to look forward to, whether it could be a trip, it could be a Scrabble conference, it could be whatever it is. It could be building your business to a certain size, whatever it is. And then also learn the skills. And that's what I tried to do in the third part of the book. It's really in thirds. I'll explain that in a second. But in the third part of the book is saying, how do you stay on purpose with setbacks? How do you stay on purpose every day? And it is that idea of being content and enjoying each moment. So many people that are striving are not happy because, when my kids are out of diapers, then I'll be happy. When my loan's paid off, then I'll be happy. When my house is paid off, then I'll be happy. When I get the promotion, then I'll be happy. So it's always striving. It's always a churn. Part of that is okay. What if we could marry that? In Paul in Philippians, for the Bible readers out there, says a really interesting statement in Philippians 3:12, somewhere in chapter 3 or 4, that says, I am commanded to be full and hungry. Full and hungry. I can get full, I can get hungry. How do I do both? And then the second half of the verse, it says to be humble and content and always striving. That's how he defines this idea of full and hungry. So if we can be full and hungry at the same time, which seems like an oxymoron or opposite, but that I think is exactly what'll bring us the most joy in life, is always have something to look forward to, a goal, a dream you're working on. But that's not the end be all. You're also being able to enjoy each moment and feel grateful and satisfied and mindful and conscious that this day is great. Even though I haven't hit my goal yet, today is great. This moment is great, right? And I think happiness and success is the balance between those two philosophies.
Well, and I have to admit that until I left corporate America, where I loved what I was doing, but hated the culture. The culture was killing me, but yet I kept fighting it. I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to do what I love. And I finally woke up one day and my younger son said to me, "You are really depressed, Mom." And I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "I see you at work and you are excited, but then somebody in that culture comes into your little bubble and you tend to lose it." He said, "This is not what you're meant to do." And I just looked at him like, oh, I'm the basic breadwinner here. I just can't quit. So that evening he sat me down with my husband and he said, "Dad, Mom's got to quit her job." My husband said,
Wow.
"Why?"
How
And
old's
he
this boy,
told
by
him.
the way? How old's your
Pardon?
son? How old was your son when he did this?
He was just about 22 at the time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. This sounds
And
mature.
he had struggled himself. He's high functioning autistic, but he he can read people. Unbelievable. And when he was saying this, my husband and I both believed him. It was like you're right. And I picked it apart and I said, if I could do what I'm doing without all this other stuff around me, I think I could be happy. And my husband just looked at me. He said, "Then you got to do it." He said, "I don't want to live with an unhappy woman." And he knew that's what was happening. And so what I did was I took everything that I basically was doing and I put it into podcasting, because what I was doing was I was helping students identify, were they ready for college? If they were, what is it they wanted to do? And I have to tell you, 90% would walk into my office and say, "I want to be a nurse because I want to help people." They didn't really want to be a nurse. They wanted to do something where they helping people. And sometimes I would sit there and cry with them because I'd know that nursing was not where they were supposed to go, but that's all they could see. And I would have to help them look outside of that. What else can you do? And that's when it dawned on me, what else can I do? And I'm doing it. And so I wake up with purpose every day. And when I don't have a show to do, then I do something else that mingles with that, that makes me better and maybe helps the next person.
Yeah.
Haven't written a book yet, though.
Sounds like there's one in there.
There may be, but there's a lot of great books like yours out there. So tell me why an individual like myself would say, "Hey, I'm going to read this. I'm going to possibly follow it because there's 1,000 others out there similar." What makes yours different?
Yeah, I think I'd answer that two ways. The first way is that I am striving for this combination between Western and Eastern philosophies. I'm trying to bring it all together to be happy in each day and to strive for excellence in your life. And most books cover one or the other. Think about it, even Tony Robbins is more the striving, make a declaration, make positive intentions in your life and go for it. Right? Where if you read some excellent mindfulness books, Eckhart Tolle, I'm reading one by Michael Singer right now about life untethered, right? Power of now, focusing on the now. And so in the book, the first third of the book is really about the value of purpose, how to develop your purpose. So I give a step-by-step guide. I call it the 777 process to developing your own purpose. This middle part of the book is about how to connect your purpose or your vision for your life to your goals, your weekly plans, your daily plans. So it's bringing it all together. And then the third part of the book is what I've just been talking about, is that how do you stay on purpose? There's setbacks that happen. Yes, I have a vision for my life. Yes, I've got a plan for it, goals and a plan for it, but I have setbacks. And how do I stay on purpose? And so it's a skill set that we don't learn in school about being grateful and focusing on what you do have. There's a skill set about being mindful, whether it's through meditation or breathing or stillness or quietness or pondering. And if you put all those together, that is a happy, successful life. So that's one way I would answer that question. It's tackling both topics: how to be happy in your everyday, and how to live and execute on your dreams.
And I'm going to make an assumption based on my background that anyone who reads this, they have to do it their way. They're going to create their way of doing it, because the way you may find your purpose and combine that and work forward through setbacks, it's going to be different than possibly I would or somebody else. I just did a podcast with a woman who lived in horrible poverty for the first 18 years, well, 18 plus years of her life. But the first 18, she lived at home. At 18, she said, I've got to get out of here. I love this family, but it's dysfunctional, and I can't live in this poverty. She wasn't talking about getting rich. She was talking about just trying to make a better life. And she did it. And as I listened to her, I realized that I'm not sure I would have done it her way. It worked for her, and she's become successful, and she has found her purpose and her happiness. But even when we find that purpose and happiness, like you said before, we still have those setbacks. We still have those sad days. We still have a black cloud that occasionally is hanging over our head.
Yep.
What do you do on those days?
So that's when you pull out your gratitude tool, right? So I also have a planner online and on Amazon as well. And on the daily sections, the one half, it starts with gratitude and learning. So kind of the Nelson Mandela, what am I grateful for? So whenever I get in a funk or those bad days, if I can't pull myself out of it that night, in the morning, this is the first thing that I do. What am I grateful for? What did I learn yesterday? And then you go to that daily planning exercise and prioritize your top priorities. And all of a sudden you're with your habits, you're back in the mood. And even if you don't feel great, you've done your morning habits, you've exercised, you've pondered, you've prayed, whatever your morning habits are, you've got yourself back in with juice and flow, and you've got a plan. And because it's a habit, it's not depending on your willpower or your mood, right? If we're really sick and we've got COVID and chest congestion, all the good habits in the world aren't going to turn that around. But right. I'm talking about, just a bad day, didn't work out like I thought, had a hard conversation with my son, whatever it might have been. Pick yourself back up, not with willpower. Willpower is fleeting. Develop habits in your life that no matter how you feel, you do. That brings you back to that state where you want to be. So that's how I coach people, that it's normal to have bad days. That's okay. If it's bad weeks and months, then you need help, right? It's more than your own personal habits.
Right.
Let's get some professional help. Please, please, please. Both on the medical side and on the psychological counseling side, please. But if it's just a bad day, pick yourself up, develop great routines in the morning and evening in particular, at either ends, and you're going to find you're adding and you're stacking very positive days together until all of a sudden you've got massive action and movement towards your goals and your life dreams.
Well, everything you're saying is extremely positive, because habits don't have to be bad. Habits can be good. And for those of us who maybe grew up hearing about all of our bad habits, not our good habits, I have a basket, and in that I have little pieces of paper that tell me what my good habits are. Okay.
Smart.
So instead of going back and looking at those bad habits, because those are easy to come out with. Okay. But when I think of a bad habit, it's like, wait a second. And I pull one out. Oh, this is what I'm really good at. Okay, let's do that. So another form of exercise that we can provide for each other. So tell my listeners how they can find you, how they can get your book, how they can develop those good habits that are going to make them have purpose.
Yeah, and in fact, I've got all those healthy habits in the third part of that book as well. So yeah, on Amazon, you can find all my books. There's 4. There's 2 on this topic, the planner and the book called Live Your Purpose. And then I also have a business book called The Truth About Being a Rainmaker, 7 Steps for Sales Excellence, and a planner that goes with that. So you can find that on Amazon under Rick Heyland. It's spelled Heyland. It looks Heyland, but it's pronounced Highland. Or my website is CI for Life with the number 4 in the middle, all one word. CI stands for continuous improvement, ci4life.org. And you can see all my tools and processes and freebies and all that kind of good stuff on there.
And if you forgot all that, by the time the podcast is over, guess what? All that information is in the show notes. So there's no reason not to find Rick. For those of you, I got a couple emails yesterday saying, Karen, you keep talking about positivity. You have these people on that like inspire me. And then I think about it and go, oh, it's not going to work. And you know what? I thought that myself for a long time. It's not until you create the new habits and start believing, but it starts with wanting to make a change. And once you decide that, the world is really beautiful out there.
Yeah, to that listener, I would coach, just start with get a piece of paper if you have a journal or a planner, and answer this one question to get you started down this path, because anybody can do this. I'm absolutely convinced. And the one question would be this: you're at your funeral, you're able somehow to watch it, and you can't control what people say, but what would you wish them to say at your funeral? Write that down. Oh, Rick was the richest, toughest, honoriest, best business guy, but not much fun. What do you want him to say? How do you want him to articulate? I'll bet you it's not, oh, he's a great businessman. That'd be nice, but I bet you there's more than that. And this is what your point earlier about it has to be tailored to you, what success looks like to you. So that's the question. Write down the answers. And then think about, okay, if that's my dream state, that's my vision of how I want to end up, how do I reverse engineer that back to what I need to do today? What do I need to do? One small thing today to start a habit to head me towards that vision. So that's a simple way to not freak out the brain about, oh, I can't do this. It's too much. It's too big. Just journalize that one simple question, and then ask yourself, what do I need to start? What's one small thing that I can start today that will start to make a big difference down the road?
Well, I hope everyone does that today. That would be a great way for us to make our communities come together, because we wouldn't be holding on to all that stuff. Thank you for joining us, Rick. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye now.
Appreciate it.